Hello and welcome to today's codebook tutorial. Today we're going to be discussing the batch creation of Revit family and Revit content into the codebook library. In a previous tutorial we covered adding singular items to the codebook library. That works very well. However, if we have an equipment library that we need to update with 200 or 300 items of equipment, that could be quite tedious. So codebook has the ability to batch load Revit content either from a loaded Revit model, a file location containing the Revit families, or it can actually parametrically create Revit content, Revit families, from an Excel schedule. We can find a batch add tool from within Revit and the Codebook Add-in tab. So if we select the option for Codebook, and when we select the option for Add Families to Library, Codebook will now open the Batch Add Revit Families to Codebook Library tool, and we can see the options we have available. The first option, defining dimensions for length, depth and height. Codebook will use this option to create an Excel spreadsheet that we can use to create our content such as code, group, classification, as well as baseline dimensions for the Revit family. So we're going to run through this now quickly. So we're going to select defining dimensions for length, depth and height, and then we're going to click Save Batch File. Codebook will ask us where it wants to create the Excel file. And here we can see now it's loaded up Excel and has created a template for us to populate, as well as creating 3 template values so we get an idea of what the data is and where it should be. So say we're bulk loading an equipment library for the first time. We have no proper Revit graphics as of yet, we purely have equipment codes. Codebook can create placeholder graphics for these items of equipment so we can then load our rooms, and as the project develops we can actually go back in and swap those graphics out for the real Revit families. So all we need to do is enter a description, a group, a class, fixed height, perhaps some codes, a description, as well as a length, depth and height, and Codebook will use these numbers to parametrically create the Revit family. So we're happy with this. We're going to close this now. And you can see Codebook's stored the path of a file we created, so we don't need to reload it. All we need to do now is click the option for Batch Add. Codebook's going to now ask you for your password and your initials, so we know who performed this update. It's now going to give you a warning. It's going to tell you that it's going to actually load these Revit families into this particular Revit model. So we're going to click Yes. What will happen now, if we haven't previously got this set up, Codebook will ask us for a default Revit family template to create these items of equipment using. So we're going to select our default furniture one. And yes, we do want to replace our thumbnail views. Now we can see now the batch add file is completed. We've added 3 items and it hasn't replaced any existing items, which is great news. Those families now will be available from within the Codebook library. Okay, that covers creation of Revit content parametrically. What we can also do, if we go back to Add Families to Library, is we can define from a folder containing RFA files. So if we have a network store somewhere with all of our Revit family graphics, we can click Browse. And Codebook will now scan this folder. So we'll click Save Batch File. And we can see that Codebook's now scanning this folder and it will create an Excel spreadsheet based on the contents. This may take a few moments, so I'm just going to pause this demonstration video here. We can see now the Excel file has been created from the Revit families. We can see the descriptions, the lengths, the family symbol name, family name, the unique ID, the length steps and categories. So we can populate these values with codes now if they haven't been actually scraped from the Revit family itself. We can save that, we can close it, and now we can batch add. That will create a Revit family library from the content of that directory. We can also choose the option from current Revit project. Then we see now Codebook's quickly scanning through the active Revit model to find all the Revit families. We can see now it's loaded into the grid all of the Revit content, and we can filter this under category. So we can filter this to furniture, plumbing, plant, etc. We then click Save Batch File again. Codebook will create the batch file in exactly the same way as before. We can enter the code if it's not found that already in the Revit model, as well as our descriptions, our groupings and our classifications. Once we're happy with that, we can save that Excel document and click Batch Add. That concludes the batch adding tutorial for Codebook. If you have any questions, please contact support@codebookinternational.com. Thank you.